Hello there guys, welcome back to the 2013 F31 318D that I bought with an engine knocking noise. Now I got this car recovered here because I attempted to drive it home, it broke down on me and the engine in the end just failed to crank over. Since charging the battery I have attempted to crank over the engine and it still does not want to crank. It kind of seems like it's trying to, but it seems like something is stuck, stopping the engine from turning. Some good news though, the engine is not seized. So let's get this out of the way. I have already put a socket and a ratchet onto the crankshaft. There should be four, I think, E12 bolts. Put a socket on there and the crankshaft turns, which is great news. That means the engine itself is not seized. I'll just do that again. But yeah, crankshaft, well, the pulley at least is definitely turning. And there is compression there as well, because you can tell when it goes to the compression stroke. Yeah, there's another one. So, the engine fully turns, but why does it not want to crank properly? Well, I've already removed the drive bar because I thought maybe it's, you know, one of the pulleys have, you know, seized. Maybe the water pump seized, maybe the alternator pulley has seized, maybe one of the idler pulleys has seized, AC compressor, I don't know. They all seem fine. I've attempted to crank the engine with the belt removed and it's still the same situation. So, could we have an issue with the only pulley that is trying to turn, which is the crankshaft pulley itself? Now, usually these pulleys tend to split into two. So, as you can see, it's rubber on the inside, and then this pulley itself, this is steel, and they tend to separate into two, and the pulley can actually fall off. That obviously hasn't happened here. There doesn't appear to be any cracks in it or anything, but one thing I have noticed is that there should be a small amount of play in this pulley, and there should be a slight gap between the pulley part and the back steel plate here, but there seems to be no gap. So I'm wondering, has this pulley actually collapsed and it's kind of, you know, binding up? Let me see if there's any play in any of the directions. Hold on. There's a slight bit of back and forth play there. There shouldn't be play because this is directly bolted onto the crankshaft, and obviously you're not going to turn the crankshaft by hand like that. I wonder if we have an issue with the crankshaft pulley, you know. Could that explain the knocking and the fact that we was low on power? I don't know. It could possibly explain why the battery's been going flat, I suppose, because if that crankshaft pulley is not aligned properly, essentially, like if it's been compressed, then it would throw the belt off of the alternator, and yeah, maybe the battery hasn't been charging properly. I don't know, it's all sort of theories at this point. I guess I'm just hoping that it's the crankshaft pulley and that, you know, the fuel system isn't kaput or something. But yeah, I think what we need to do is, now I know you shouldn't do this, but I think what I need to do is remove the crankshaft pulley, and then we can inspect it. But then maybe I'm going to try and crank the engine with the crankshaft pulley removed, see if there's any difference. I mean, we don't have anything to lose at this point, so yeah, let's get that crankshaft pulley removed and see if there's any difference. Okay, so that's all 4 bolts removed. Crankshaft pulley should just pull off now. Yeah. So I mean, yeah, having a look at the crankshaft pulley, can't really see anything obviously wrong with it. There is a few light cracks around the outside here. I don't think that's it failed though. But yeah, I'm sure you're supposed to have a slight bit of play here, because this is what takes the vibrations, but there's not really anything there. And this is the original one as well. Yeah, it's a genuine BMW one. If you're wondering what the end of the crankshaft looks like, that's it. So you have a oil seal there. Looks like something's stuck in there. That doesn't look normal. There's a piece of metal there. Something don't look right in there. I think I need to remove that oil seal to get a proper look, see what's going on. So, got the front oil seal removed, and I really don't know what's going on here. I don't know what this is. It's like a bearing or a race, but two chunks of it have came off. There's another piece of it. Don't think it's part of the oil seal. Doesn't look like it is anyway. It's like it's part of the timing cover. But why would it just break away like that? That's very strange. So I've just been looking up on Real OEM, and like there's no extra bearing on the end of the crankshaft. There's just the main bearings, and then there is the the rod bearings. There doesn't seem to be any sort of special bearing or race on the inside of the engine block. It's just the oil seal. So whether or not it's just a bit of casting, that's came away, I don't know. But there's not a lot we can do now at this point. So I think I am going to do what I planned to do and try and crank over the engine. Now hopefully it doesn't start, because you don't really want to run the engine without a crankshaft pulley, because it'll be vibrating like mad. But I'm fairly confident that piece of cast, if that's what it is, piece of cast aluminium from the block itself, if that's, I'm fairly confident that's not making contact with the crankshaft. We'll soon know anyway once we crank it over if it is. Right, go on then. Okay, so yeah, crankshaft was definitely turning, but just turning way too slow to even warrant a start. So it's really hard to say. Do we have something internal that is, binding up, or when I'm on about something internal, do we have like piston damage or cylinder damage, or is it just like the fact that the starter motor is not spinning it over fast enough? Could it be a starter motor issue? Where do we go from here? Okay, so I think it's pretty obvious that the crankshaft is not the cause for the engine not cranking over, or not cranking over fast enough, because as you see, the crankshaft does turn, but yeah, it's nowhere near spinning fast enough to start this engine. And then I thought, could it be a coincidence that the starter motor is bad? The starter motor is not spinning the engine over fast enough. Then I look into the car, remove the under tray, and what do I see? The starter motor is covered in oil. Now, it could just be a coincidence. The starter motor could be absolutely fine, but I think what I want to do is at least clean the starter motor up and then maybe do some testing on it just to make sure it is still fine. I mean, I can probably remove it completely. It's probably not that difficult to remove, to be honest, so I may just go ahead and do that. So I was fully just about to remove the starter motor, went to remove this main positive cable itself, and this nut that holds it on was loose. Now, could that be our issue? I don't know, but I've tightened it up. I've just gave the starter motor a bit of a clean up. I've gave it a few taps with a mallet, and yeah, we're just gonna crank and see if that made any difference. If not, then we will just remove it and see if we can see anything obviously wrong with it. Okay, so battery hooked back up, have the jump starter on. Let's just get in and see if she cranks. So, no good on that attempt. I'm just going to give the starter motor a few more knocks. Nope, no good. Let's take the starter motor off, see if we can see anything wrong with it. So, we have a bad starter, or should I say a bad starter solenoid. So, a bit of a crude way of testing, I know, but I have some jumper cables just connected up to the battery. Don't worry, I've completely disconnected the battery, so it's not connected to the car in any way, positive and negative, both removed. And then I have a negative cable just basically grounding the starter motor, have a positive cable onto where the main positive cable supplies power to the solenoid, and now what I'm going to do is make contact with the jumper cable and then onto the post where the solenoid switches over to the starter motor, and watch what happens. So, starter motor and gear just spins where it is. It's supposed to pop out and then spin. So, the fact that it isn't popping out when we are supplying 12 volts to it, this has got to be the issue why it's cranking, or cranking is so slow. I mean, it doesn't, I don't really know why it's even cranking at all if it's not popping out, you know, the gear, but this definitely isn't gonna start the engine, is it? So yeah, I think we need a new starter motor, that's for sure. Now, lucky enough for me, I have another N47 powered BMW 318D. In fact, this is a 2010, but it has the same exact engine as this. This is a 2013, but yeah, same engine, same starter motor. So let's get the starter motor off Project KFC, installed onto this car, and see if we notice any difference. See if this wants to crank. Replacement starter motor now in place. I've connected the battery back up. Let's get inside, try and crank this over. Yep, so that definitely cranked over that time, a lot faster. That was just about to start, but I didn't actually want to start it because obviously I don't have the crankshaft pulley in place, and well, I don't even have an oil seal in place. But let's say we reinstall the crankshaft pulley with no oil seal and maybe put the pipe back on the turbo, and shall we try and get this thing started temporarily? So, crankshaft pulley back in place, obviously oil seal is not in place, so oil will leak out if this runs for any amount of time. And then I've just put the intake pipe back on the turbo just to prevent the turbo from sucking anything in. But yeah, I guess we should just get inside, try and get this thing started. So, oh crap. Yeah, a lot of oil just leaked out then. Right, it runs, but it's still definitely knocking. And yeah, quite a lot of oil just squirted out then, so I definitely didn't want to run it any longer than that. Let's take the crankshaft pulley off and then run it just for like a second or two and see if there's any difference.
Stop! Stop!
So after briefly starting up the engine without the crankshaft pulley off, made even more of a mess, but that has confirmed that the crankshaft pulley is not the cause of the knocking, and it's not pulley or belt related. So that's kind of gotten to the bottom of that. Now, it did only run for like a couple of seconds, but it kind of seemed like the noise was coming from the turbo area. Now, could the turbo cause that knocking noise, or am I just barking down the wrong tree again, or barking up the wrong tree should I say, and it is fuel related and you know the injectors need replacing or something. Obviously a lot of diagnostic work still to be done, but I can't get over the fact that there's no fuel related codes. I'm going to give it another scan just in case, but I'm pretty sure there's no fuel related code. So I thought, you know, if one of the injectors is not providing enough pressure, then you know it would it would throw a fault code. So it's a bit strange. Okay, so where do we go from here then? So we know that the engine runs, it isn't seized. I don't know why it cut out when it did. If it's a fueling issue, then maybe that, you know, there wasn't enough fuel pressure there. I don't know, I'm only, you know, surmising things. You know, I'm only guessing at this point. When it did cut out when we was driving, we was heading up a hill, so naturally you would need more fuel. So that's sort of where I'm thinking with things. The fact that it didn't start again though, that's for sure. That has to be the starter motor, right? The fact that that starter motor, you know, was not working as it should. The solenoid was not pushing the gear out, and we put the starter motor from my E91 on, and it fired straight up pretty much. So, yeah, it for sure definitely needs a starter motor. The knocking though, what is that knocking? Now, I have done a rough running control on it using my diagnostic tool, and I have some figures, so I'll share them with you right now. So bear in mind, they are all supposed to be between -5 and 4. So cylinder 1 is out of spec, -5.25. Cylinder 3 is in spec, but it's getting close to being out of spec, -3.19. Cylinder 4 out of spec, 5.59, and cylinder 2 2.85. Now I know cylinder 2, the injector, has been replaced on that, and I actually coded that as well. I thought, you know, I may as well code it because I know the previous owner said they swapped out cylinder 2 injector but it wasn't coded, and I seen that it wasn't coded, so I coded that. That made no difference, the knocking is still there. So yeah, we have at least 2 injectors out of tolerance. Bear in mind as well, these were only after running the engine for 10 seconds maximum. I mean, the numbers were sort of bouncing all over the place. Just had to take a photo. I didn't want to run the engine for, you know, too long because we'd just lose all of the oil out of that front crank seal. But yeah, injectors, according to the rough running control, or the smooth running control should I say, injectors are not looking the best. Now, could this be the cause of our problems, or could this be a symptom of another problem? Again, I don't know. Where do I go from here? Please let me know your suggestions. Do I swap out the injectors? Maybe do I take out the injectors from my E91, put them in this car and see if we notice any difference? Only thing, if I do that though, I don't want to cause any damage to those injectors, because then it means I've got two sets of bad injectors. So if it's like a, you know, high pressure fuel pump that has failed, then on this, then potentially if I put fresh injectors in, they're, you know, it's just going to fail them injectors as well. So I don't know whether to just buy another used complete fuel system, so high pressure fuel pump, injectors and fuel rail, because I know that when the high pressure fuel pumps fail on these, it basically takes out all of that. It takes swarf through the fuel rail, and then, you know, basically blocks up all the injectors. So that is one potential avenue that I'm looking down. Or another option is that I just replace the engine. The thing when it comes to replacing the engine though, it's a bit of a gamble. I mean, you buy one online, they say it's running, and you put it in and then it has another issue. So I don't know what to do at this point. Whatever happens though, I want this car to be a quick turnaround. I am going to park it up for a couple of days now, but I want to get this done within like a matter of a couple of weeks. So I want the car to be gone. Like, there's nothing else wrong with the car. It's a beautiful car. There's a decent amount of profit in it. It should allow me to move up in this trading up series, but of course we need to fix it. I mean, after we fix that issue, the knocking noise, then I'll probably just service the car, give it a quick oil change, and it'll be ready to go out the door. But yeah, and we need to obviously get to the bottom of this issue first. Please let me know what you think down below. I want to thank you all for watching anyway. Remember to give this video a like. Again, comments down below, subscribe if you have not already done so, and I will see you all in that next one.